That's the only place I've been in Italy. But it was one of the places that perpetuated stereotypes most. Because when I got there on my first day, I saw a lady drop her purse and everything spilled out, and she went, "Mamma mia!" And I was like, "Oh my god, they say that?" I thought that was just a thing we invented for cartoon pizza chefs.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I was really happy about that. But then again, she might have been some like Dutch tourist who's just mocking them and kind of when in Rome.
Yeah, it's like when
we were in Rome, say "Mamma mia."
Yeah, when we were in Paris, I had a someone say "ooh la la" in a shop. Like, we were also shopping and we heard them say "ooh la la," and I was like, oh my god, they actually say that here.
Just like when we say "a" all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, eh?
It's like such a stereotypical thing that like no one actually says, so I don't even really know how to use it properly.
Yeah, the American-Canadian accent is not one that exists.
No.
It's the one that they mock. There is a Canadian accent.
Yes.
And I'll break into it when I play hockey, but it's not the one in the movies. But let's get into it. Welcome everyone to a very special episode of I Love This, You Should Too. What makes it special? I don't know. My name is Indy, Mamma Mia Randawa, and with me is my lovely co-host Samantha, Ooh La La Randawa.
Oh, I like that.
So we are in the middle of Audrey Hepburn month, and it was my turn to pick a movie. I picked my favorite Audrey Hepburn movie, 1953's Roman Holiday. Samantha had seen it before, but so long ago that she didn't even know the ending or what was going to happen, so it's pretty much like a brand new watch.
Yeah, there was like moments that I remembered, but I did not remember like the whole plot. Like there were just things like big gaps, so it kind of felt like a whole new movie.
If you don't remember the whole plot, maybe you should go watch it because we are going to spoil it. That's how these episodes work. So it will be all spoiled. But you know what? The movie is, it's been out for a while. So you should probably just go watch it already.
You've had time.
So let's get into it. The titular question. First of all, I absolutely still love this movie. I think it holds up. It's probably my favorite romantic comedy ever. It's definitely in the top 3. I can't think of a better one right now. So I'm going to say it's the best one ever.
Okay.
But Samantha, I love this movie. Did you?
I loved it.
Oh, love.
It was fantastic.
Wow.
I just it's been a really long time since I've seen Audrey Hepburn being Audrey Hepburn. I feel like My Fair Lady was such a big character that there wasn't as much like classic Audrey Hepburn acting.
It's not just her natural charm.
Yes.
Which I think is what carries her performance here.
Mm-hmm. So like in My Fair Lady, she's playing this huge character. And here she's playing a character, but it's not as all-encompassing, so she kind of shines through in it. And there was a lot of things, and I realized how well I know Breakfast at Tiffany's because I kept being like, oh, that just sounds like her talking in Breakfast at Tiffany's, or like, oh, that like look that she does, that looks like something that she does in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I realized just how much of her acting style is just like her being charming. Mm-hmm. And so
this one, I think more than any of her performances, perhaps, she got this role from her screen tests for this are out there.
Oh.
And I've seen them and they are so charming because she does her lines and everything and that's all well and good. But the camera operator was directed to continue filming even when she wasn't doing the lines. Mm-hmm. And when you get to see her talk about just her life, and she's just like answering some simple questions, it's so incredibly charming. And you know what it is? It's Princess Anne.
Yeah.
So Wyler saw that and was like, even if she is not this star who's been in all of these movies, mm-hmm. if we can get that natural charm, then we're going to be fine. And he got that from her.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is something that I, maybe not having seen as many Audrey Hepburn movies like together in a like small period of time, I think I didn't realize that this was just how fantastic she is. So yes, I loved it.
Well, we are going to talk about this movie. I'll probably do some of that thematic stuff that, I always get into, but it's not as present in this movie. So I think we just go through the movie, talk about it as it comes, because it's just a delightful movie to watch.
So delightful.
So it starts off with that newsreel footage, and she's waving. She kind of does that Mussolini wave that I'm doing right now with the back of her hand, where it's kind of like a come here kind of wave.
It was more of a like small wrist circle.
Yeah.
Which is something that apparently royalty did at the time.
I think we don't realize how standardized waving has become. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a set way to wave back then.
Yeah, because it's just like...
Because what do you think of a queen wave? It's this kind of cupped one forward. But Mussolini would wave with the back of his hand, kind of like
so
Princess
weird.
Anne does. Because people were like, maybe waving was still new and we're all kind of figuring it out.
Yeah. What I learned from Princess Diaries is that it's
and
very
that's
tiring
gonna
to
come
wave
up.
for a very long time. So you just do small, like, repetitive motions because you don't want to be like...
Oh,
waving
that makes
real
sense.
hard for a long time, because if you're in like a 3-kilometer parade, you're gonna have to like wave that entire time at everybody.
Yeah, I guess I've never tried to wave for 5 minutes straight.
Very tiring. So I think the teeny tiny little like wrist circle is a lot easier than like just waving it up like we do now.
Huh. And it is like cultural too, because I always talk about the Korean wave. So when I lived in Korea, it's always two hands walking towards someone. They're two-hand wavers. And then when I came back, I was doing that for a while because I'd kind of just picked it up.
I prefer like a finger wiggle.
Oh,
like,
yeah. Maybe I just don't wave all that often. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. But it starts with that newsreel footage and that opening sequence that really sets up her character when she is greeting everyone. She's speaking other languages and her feet are tired, so she's kind of like trying to stretch them out a little bit. And I love that for its economy of storytelling. It tells me so much already.
Yes.
And this movie seems like slow moving in so many ways because she is greeting all of these people and we're sitting here and just watching them all.
Yeah.
But we're also getting that character stuff because it sets her up as someone who is great at her job. She's speaking all of these languages. She has such poise, but also she is just a person.
Yes.
It humanizes her right at the beginning.
Absolutely. And during the newsreel, I liked that at the beginning of the tour, because it's kind of a synopsis of her royal tour. At the beginning of the tour, she's like happy and she seems like she has some energy. And by the end, when she's greeting everyone, she's like not even holding her smile on the entire time she's like on show. And you kind of see her get more and more tired and more like kind of annoyed with the fact that she has to continue doing this.
And then she goes up to get changed for the evening and we get... Well, maybe my favorite line in this whole movie when she says, I hate this nightgown. I hate all my nightgowns and I hate my underwear too. I love that bit. And you get to see how she is like a young woman. She's not just this stoic princess that is up there to do all of these kind of diplomatic things. She is a young woman. She's a girl.
She wants, it seems like, just a little bit of freedom.
She just wants to wear pajamas. Just the top.
Yeah. Which is funny.
And the whole bit about the schedule and her saying, thank you. No, thank you. It just shows how robotic she has become and the very nature of celebrity and this kind of celebrity in particular.
Yeah. And how uninteresting she finds it.
And this is in 1953. So it's an American production, even though this is a very European movie. So it has a lot of those American sensibilities, or as we'll talk about, maybe anti-American sensibilities. But the American ideals of the 50s, this is the post-war period. And she is kind of this symbol of women of this time where everything is going to be great now and we're living these perfect lives and we all have to look perfect. It's kind of where all of these housewife ideals all stem from the 50s, right? Through her, the world is kind of saying, be perfect. If you express any kind of displeasure, we are going to drug you so you kind of fit in.
Yeah.
Like that's how they quell it. Because
that was very much the 50s. Too.
Yeah. She voices her needs and they're just dismissed or ignored, and she's kind of reaching this point of what of course they're going to call hysteria. So then they just give her some drugs and put her to bed, which is played as comedic in this, and it is. It's a great bit, but that is kind of indicative of how women are seen at this point of time.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole like perfect hair and makeup and outfit, and don't show your stress to like if your wife, like your husband, and make sure that his life is nice when he gets home from work because he's been working all day. Like you aren't keeping the house up and that kind of thing. And yeah,
it's about duty.
It's
right?
about duty, and this is what you have to do as a wife, and you have to, do all these things or else you are a failure and crazy and hysterical. And yeah, you can.
And then
really,
you get shot up full of tranquilizers.
and yeah, or given stimulants to make you more peppy.
So then we get all that sleepy Audrey stuff, which is great. She escapes in a sequence that is very much like an escape from prison type of movie. And she's found by Gregory Peck. We see him gambling a bunch with his friends and eventually gets back to his place. And another great line of, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but this is most unusual. And to be in front of a man in my pajamas is most unusual.
Yeah.
But I don't seem to mind. And he forces her to sleep on the couch. And of course, she goes right into the bed.
Yeah, of course. I liked in this sequence because she's heavily drugged and she's not like in her right mind, nor is she like remembering any of this. So she's kind of in this like dreamlike trance. And I really enjoyed how she stayed very prim and proper, but she was almost able to like give a like commentary of what she was doing, like I don't seem to mind it, so it seems fine, and like stuff like that where like, oh, this is so unusual, and like I don't know if like this is okay. And I just enjoyed this little peek into her relaxing and like letting go a bit, even though it wasn't like her choice, but you get this like kind of calmer version of herself, and I liked it.
And I like the introduction of Gregory Peck. And of course, their meeting, as silly as it is, because they both seem just nice and good. Mm-hmm. And although he has all these gambling debts and he's picking up this woman and taking her back to his place, but he's a good guy. I think we get that right away, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know in a lot of movies of this time, or of more recent times even, we'll watch it and they do terrible things and you're like, yeah, it was a different time. And I always say, like, that's not an excuse, because good is good and bad is bad. And sure, there's certain words that we don't use anymore that didn't have the same meanings, but this movie shows you that it's not like everyone was terrible in the 50s or something. It's just like movies now that we normalize things and we know it's not good, but we just don't think about it, right? Like, how many romantic comedies have you brought to me and I say like, yeah, but that guy is a sociopath. That's not how a normal person acts. And you're like, yeah, but it's a movie.
Yeah.
So I think we have to stop just saying like, oh, it was a different time, because people knew. And Gregory Peck's character, Joe, knows, and he's not a terrible like predator.
Yes, exactly. And he's like worried about her when he's trying to get her into the taxi, and then is like, okay, well, you catch the next one, I guess, or like whatever he says. And he like just can't in good conscience leave her on the side of the road.
But he's also not this knight in shining armor.
No.
He's like, oh God, now I have to deal with this.
Yeah, this whole thing.
Him being a good person is a burden to him, because he's a good guy, but he also exists in the real world.
Yes.
Just like how she is this princess, but kind of exists in our real world too. This whole movie is almost like a fairy tale. It has so many of those fairy tale elements, but just brought into our world, right? She's a princess. He is a down on his luck guy who could become a prince, right? Like we have all of those things, but that's not how it works out, because it's the real world. She even has the like, oh, I'm going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight. There's like a clock on it, right? She has that one day, and that's it.
And she knows everything has to go back to the way it is. And not to jump to the end again, but I do know that like she's aware of what she needs to do in her life. Mm-hmm. And this is just her one little tiny rebellion, and you can tell that she's just going to go back to her life then. And
can you tell at this point that she's like in for one fun day and then is going to go back to how things were?
It kind of seemed like it.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess we'll get there, but you never thought that she was going to come back around the corner? You never thought that knocking was her coming back?
No.
Wow. Who are you, me? So he becomes aware of who she is, has a little thing with his boss and he's going to get the story. So now we got our whole premise set up, and she is going to go explore Rome. And one of her first stops, of course, is to get a haircut.
Yeah. I love this little act of rebellion because in the beginning of the movie, she has this beautiful, elaborate hair done with her ball gown and everything. And I love this, like, let's cut off the one thing that everyone knows about me is that I have great hair. And let's just all of it off.
You like to quote Coco Chanel, right? Wasn't it her that said, like, a woman who cuts her hair is about to change her life?
Yes.
I think that's what she said.
I do remember that quote.
And makeovers in movies are always about change and about growth. But here it's kind of the opposite, right? Because I think Princess Diaries is probably a movie that came to both of our minds while watching this.
Absolutely.
Are they both from Genovia?
Oh, maybe.
I like to think that's where she's from.
This is like Princess Mia's great-grandmother.
Or like aunt or something like that. Yeah.
I like that. Because, yeah, they never tell you where she's from.
No, she's just European.
From the kingdom.
Swedenborgia.
I like that they are from Genovia then, too.
But like I was saying, we see makeovers a certain way, and the Princess Diaries is that way. Mm-hmm. That movie I liked very much, but I had many issues with. So you'd be like, why do you love this one so much? It does the same thing. But I'd argue this does the exact opposite thing. Because this isn't about her like, oh, I'm a klutz. Oh, I don't fit in. And now I get a makeover and I'm beautiful.
Right.
She starts out there as like the most prim and proper and poised person that you could get.
Yeah.
And she wants to get rid of that. It's the opposite of what we usually see. And here her makeover isn't about becoming beautiful. It's about her exerting her autonomy over herself. She has no control over what she wears, how her hair is day to day. So this act of rebellion is her taking back something. So like, I have control over myself.
Yeah. And I loved that the things that she chose were like a haircut, a new pair of shoes, and like
sensible flats.
Yeah. And like going out in a very simple outfit.
Mm-hmm.
Like not what we see her in at the beginning and at the end of the movie. She's wearing like a skirt and a blouse. Like it's nothing
and
too
that
exciting.
One outfit changes throughout the day. She literally and figuratively loosens up as the day goes on. First the scarf's gone, then her sleeves change.
She like rolls her sleeves into short sleeves.
Yeah. And the button's undone and the collar is down. So she's becoming more regular. Mm-hmm. And to her that's the makeover. That's the change.
Yeah. It's like a make under.
And there's so many other good sequences through this. There's the Vespa one and then she gets arrested, and then they say like, oh, we're getting married. So everyone's like, oh, you newlyweds, go for it.
I like how that's an excuse that the Italian police will accept.
Yeah, like, oh, you're getting married? Oh, okay,
never
whatever.
mind that you almost killed a bunch of people.
We'll forgive all the damage. There's that bit at the Mouth of Truth.
Yes, I liked that moment.
I love that scene so much. I think I annoyed you because when we were watching it, I was like, oh, watch her reaction on this. And then we rewatched it. And I once again said, but then watch what she does right after.
Yes.
Because I love that scene because that is her.
Yeah.
She didn't know that was going to happen. This was an improv scene. Gregory Peck like pretended to get his hand chopped off. That wasn't how it was supposed to go. So her reaction, that incredibly charming reaction, is just how she is. Huh. Doesn't it make you love it that much more?
She's amazing.
She really is.
Wow.
And I love just Rome in this, right?
Uh-huh.
It's the biggest cliche of so many romantic comedies of like, well, New York is kind of like the third main character of this. But like Rome really is.
Yeah.
And in this one, how they did it, I think, is especially of note, because I think this is the first American movie to ever be shot on location in its entirety. Like they wanted to shoot it in a studio and just like, yeah, we can just build those things.
Yeah, we'll just
paint it on
Rome.
a backdrop.
Yeah.
It'll take more than a day from what I hear. But they said, you can either shoot it on location or you can have color. You get one. And Wyler picked shooting on location and then doing them black and white because this was supposed to be in color.
Wow. I was wondering about that, whether or not that was like a choice.
Budgetary choice, not a stylistic choice.
Right.
From my understanding.
I was thinking about that, but I was like, save it for the podcast, Samantha.
Yeah, I know that that was a thing. Originally, Cary Grant was going to be in it. Frank Capra was set to direct, but because Dalton Trumbo, who really wrote the script but isn't credited, was blacklisted. He's like, I'm not working with one of those commies, or maybe I just don't want to be associated with him because then I'll be put out of work too. So he dropped out, and that's when Wyler came in. They had talks with Elizabeth Taylor and Cary Grant to be in it instead, but man, I'm glad they went with
that. Would have been
with.
such a different movie.
Yeah,
and I just really
I think Liz Taylor was real young then too, because I think she's younger than Audrey Hepburn.
Oh,
and Cary Grant's definitely older than Gregory Peck. But I love how they use Rome because the language is never subtitled or anglicized. People, I assume these are all actual Roman people.
Yeah, that just like people just wandering around, living their lives. Yeah.
And we get to go around and we get to hear a little bit of history. And he tells the story of the Mouth of Truth and all of those kinds of things. So it feels not just like, hey, look, it's Rome. Wild, huh? Look at these foreigners. It's not that at all. They seem to be a part of it and experiencing it as you would. It's not just those like stereotypical touchstones. They just kind of live in it, and they don't need to make a point of being like, Rome, crazy, huh?
Yeah.
While so many movies that come out later, anytime they go to a different country, like it gets offensive, really. And we're gonna talk about Breakfast at Tiffany's next week, and this doesn't fall into those sort of things. So it's not just, you can't just forgive things by saying like, now was the time, because it doesn't have to be like that. And this movie shows you that it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, it felt very much, and I have to say, like, it made me a little bit like nostalgic for Paris, because it felt so authentic to be in this like little European city and sitting on the sidewalk, and like it felt like you said, like everyday life in that city. I liked that about this movie. It didn't feel like other movies.
And it has all those backdrops of big famous things, but that was my takeaway from walking around Rome, is you just stumble upon them. They're everywhere. It's not like you have to go seek out these.
No, it's just an old
things.
city. There's stuff.
I got lost looking for a restaurant and just like, hey, is that Trevi Fountain?
Yeah.
And you just kind of go see
you just kind of, and there's a moment where Audrey also stumbles around a corner and is like, oh, it's the Trevi Fountain. And it's just like your experience.
We're just the same, me and Audrey.
Yep. I'm always saying that.
Thank you. And I also love that this movie takes time for the romance to build. I think the first kiss is at about 1:30, maybe?
Oh, wow. And how long is this one?
Just under 2 hours.
Okay. So yeah, that's a long time for them to finally realize that they're like into each other.
And I don't think there's any sort of romantic tension or flirtation until that dance, when they're dancing together, and that's about halfway through the movie. And that's a great scene too. That's the t-shirt that I had made. Someone made me a t-shirt because I said there's no Audrey Hepburn men's t-shirts out there. So she drew a picture on a shirt, and it's of Audrey with the guitar about to smash.
Oh.
So that scene is great. The dancing, and then the I guess that's another good example of just being in the city and being with the people. And then the fight that breaks out is so much fun too. Yeah,
absolutely. And I liked that the kiss happened. It was like a very like, you have that like crazy shared experience and you're all caught up in the moment. And like, it felt like something that would actually happen in real life, as opposed to one of those like movie moments.
And then when they go back to his apartment, it gets real sad real quick. And there's that line, I can't remember exactly, but it's about life isn't always doing what one likes. And they're just talking about like, yeah, life is not fun. You just had to do things just to do them, not because we want to, but because we have to. And that's a theme that kind of goes throughout the movie. In this kind of grand romantic holiday, we get these doses of harsh reality of, yeah, of course I'd love to do this, but that's not how the world works. We have to go do things we hate now.
Yeah.
And then they have that real sad hug. And they kiss too, but the hug just seems more appropriate because this is, I think there is love there, but it's not lust for sure. But the love is always in equal proportion to the sadness of what will never be, because they both know that it's not going anywhere. Which was, it's tragic in a lot of ways, right?
It is tragic. And I also think that it was a smart choice to kind of go with less kissing, just based on how like prim and proper and like duty bound she is. I feel like she's not going to be running around just like kissing strangers.
No, and if she does, that's a different movie. That's
Yes.
someone breaking free from, and she is in a way, but not in that way.
It just didn't seem like it would have been like part of her character.
Yeah.
From what we know of her, like she's very reserved still, even if she is breaking out of her life for a day.
I guess we never really talk about the look of this movie. The cinematography of it never really jumped out at me. Like, it's good, but it's about the locations. But I guess when I was looking at it this time, there were a few things that I noticed, and it was the use of their close-ups. There's a lot of really good close-ups, and I think I never noticed it because when you watch a close-up, you just kind of get lost in watching Audrey's face, right?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't realize how many stills of Audrey Hepburn are from this movie.
Yeah,
Like
because of those close-ups,
Yes,
right?
and so much of this is just like, oh, well, that's on a bag. Oh, that's on a t-shirt. Oh, somebody's got an apron of that. And like, it's just amazing how photogenic she is and just how classic Audrey Hepburn this movie is without even realizing that this is like absolutely going to be everywhere.
No, because this was introducing Audrey
Yes,
Hepburn.
exactly.
And
So-
also, she only got that credit because Gregory Peck demanded it. Billing was a big thing in these days.
Yes, I do. I know a little bit about that. But
So in his contract, he's billed to be the only one before the title of the movie. It's Gregory Peck, and then you'd get Roman Holiday, and then you'd get the cast,
Right.
including Audrey Hepburn. But after working with her, he said, like, no, you need to put her in front of the title
Yeah.
as well. And she is.
because usually it was like main actor in the title of the movie. Yeah.
But
That's
now you got the
amazing.
introducing right away.
Yeah.
But that use of close-ups was really great because first, it's so dependent on the actors and their ability to convey a lot in really subtle ways, because you can't be big if you're always in these close-ups. And the two of them were great at that. And then there are these kind of back and forth close-ups, particularly in the times of love going into sadness, like
Yeah.
at the goodbye or like at in the apartment at that time. It effectively acts as dialogue between them. It's like their emotions are talking to each other by having these back and forth close-ups and having them just emote. And
Yes.
that's enough.
And that's something that Audrey Hepburn is so good at, is just emoting.
Yeah.
Not like, she doesn't need every other line exactly. She does so much just with her face and with like a flick of her eyes and just like a movement in her shoulders or how she holds her chin. Like, she's so good that she like doesn't even need the dialogue.
Yeah, and I think that they made good use of that. Wyler did a good job of using that and harnessing it really with all those back and forth close-ups. But then we get to the sad part and he drives her back and she says, don't come after me. Don't even watch. Just let me go.
Don't look for me after I turn the corner.
Oh, that was hard.
That was a sad moment. And so many movies that I've watched try and like emulate that.
But they always come back.
They always come back. Yes.
And he waits for her. That was hard too. That's another one of those times where Wyler lets the movie go.
Yeah.
He just lets
He
him
just
wait for a while.
wait it out. Yeah. Which is, it's so sad. And I just love that moment where they just give it the silence.
Mm-hmm.
And you just like feel sad for a moment.
And she goes back to the palace and meets all of her attendants and whatnot. And she just tells them off.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
That was so good.
She says something to the effect of, they get on her about her duty to her family and to her country. And she says something about how, were I not completely aware of my duty, I would not have come back.
Yeah.
Not today or not ever.
I love
That
that she
was
has
great.
this moment standing up for herself. It was fantastic.
Yeah, and then it goes on to when she's a countess, I guess, her like
countess,
lady
yeah.
in waiting
Yeah.
brings the milk and crackers, and she says, no milk and crackers tonight. And she's going to undress herself. She's not going to take that. And she's changed. She is an independent woman now. And I think this movie, I think people don't always watch the movies they have in their mind of like, oh yeah, this is an iconic movie. I know what it's about.
Yeah.
I think this is one of those where it's not seen as often as it should be. But
yeah, she definitely has this change, and you can see Countess Verberg, that's her name. She's like realizes it as she turns around and curtsies, and she kind of realizes that like, oh, something's changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think partially because obviously if she's a lady in waiting, she's there to do the bidding of whoever she's serving, but she's also like knows Anne really well and is like, okay, we're gonna figure this out tomorrow. She's like, no, this is what she needs. She needs some space. And I liked her as kind of the person in charge for Anne in all the scenes, like the few scenes that she was in, but I liked her.
What I was saying or trying to say before was that I think this role is kind of like diminished or relegated into being like, oh, she's a fashion icon. That's what Princess Anne was, when she should be looked on as like a earlier Hollywood feminist icon, right? She should get more credit for being a woman who is going to prioritize her own needs and desires and self-determination than just be what she's expected to be. She remains being what she's expected to be because she has that obligation and that duty. And she is showing you that, like, yes, you can be both. And I think that kind of gets lost a little bit.
Yeah.
And then things are wrapping up. The photographer, who we never talked about, he was pretty fun too, though, comes over, and you didn't think that was Anne knocking at the door.
No.
Because you love your romances hard and sad.
No,
the opposite.
I like the opposite, but I don't know. I just had a feeling it wasn't going to be her.
And then we get to have the kind of reunion. And this meeting, I don't know, it works for me in so many ways.
Yeah.
This is another instance where this sounds like bad filmmaking if you're like, oh yeah, and then she talks to each person and we just watch her say hello to 12 people.
Yeah.
But it worked for me because there's that tension of what's going to happen when she gets to him.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the answer is not much, but also so much.
Yeah, there was so much kind of unspoken under the surface.
Yeah.
And with that lead up, you're really like reading into their entire conversation because you know that she's like duty bound to talk to every single person in the front row. And then,
or she's not. She chooses to go do that.
Well, yes, but she's going to approach.
Oh, yeah, she can't go just to one.
No, she can't just like go to one person and be like, "Oh, I'm going to talk to you." Like, you know that to keep it fair and away from like people being like pointing fingers or anything, she's going to talk to every single person. Sure. And I just loved, like you said, that moment of time where you're just waiting for the reunion to happen. And then, yeah, you do read into every little moment of it that they're not saying so much.
This is a perfect example of how they both just do little looks. And it told me the story. I was never confused because in a lot of movies, this would be like, aha, I got you. Like, hey, you tricked me. That would be the subtext here, but that's not it at all. And you can tell exactly what the subtext is by looking at their eyes. There is that one part where they ask questions and it's clearly veiled about what they had experienced. Like, oh yes, I share your sentiments that people can get together and all of that. And clearly they're talking about the two of them. And I did also love that bit of, well, which country did you enjoy the most? And she starts doing her very formulaic textbook answer.
Yes.
Each one had its own. And she stops herself and says, Rome, by all means, Rome.
Absolutely.
And that was me. Like, I didn't cry this time, but it's close.
I got a little teary at the end.
This whole sequence, it's hard not to. And I love that it also mirrors the beginning of the movie, right? Because there she had her sore feet or maybe itchy feet. And itchy feet, that's kind of like a saying for someone who needs to like leave, needs to travel. And then you could read into it and say like, oh, she's on heels right at the beginning, and then she trades them in for flats to like, kind of throw that off. But also at the beginning, she's on heels and there's one heel because her life's out of balance. She's trying to balance these two parts of herself, but I'm probably looking into it too much. Either way,
it all makes sense.
At the end, it's a mirror of that because again, she's talking to each one of these people, but now she's not uncomfortable. She doesn't have sore feet. She doesn't have itchy feet. She's in charge of herself. She's completely in charge of herself and walks with such a confidence that she didn't have before because she has found herself. She is choosing to go and meet everyone. At the beginning, she goes to sit down and the guy says, no, you have to stand up here. You have to do this. And then she has to go through and greet everyone.
Right.
Here, everyone's ready to leave. And she says, no, I want to go talk to everyone. She's becoming a full-fledged woman.
Yes.
Now, right?
And she's like, I will now speak with the members of the press.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, what?
Yeah, I am choosing.
I will.
It's on her terms, but there's still that sadness to it.
And that sense of duty.
And then it gets even sadder because everybody leaves and Joe is there by himself.
Just standing.
And then he just walks out and you just hear his footsteps.
Yeah.
And the camera, like, I don't know what to make of this yet, but that's the wobbliest we see the camera in the movie too.
Absolutely.
Because it's the formality has kind of broken down by this point, right?
Yeah.
It's just the emotion. And it's not a overwrought, like, oh, I'll never see her again. It's not that. It's just a solemn but understanding sadness that they both have. And that's the note the movie goes out on, which is such a brave choice.
Yeah, it was such a sad ending. And also you can tell that it's like kind of a classic rom-com that they like taught each other something, right? Like they, exchanged ideas and they learned from their time together. And I really believe that is like what we're supposed to feel as well as just like sad that it didn't work out is that like, yeah, but they're like different people now.
They've both become more like each other.
Yeah. And they've changed each other for the better. And you get that feeling as he's walking away and like, it just feels like they're going to be okay because they've learned a lesson here.
But this ending could not exist in a movie today.
No,
they would
absolutely
not allow it. Because I always talk about what I hate about romantic comedies, and it's the same part in every movie. And when we get there, I'm like, oh, now we have to do this. Had this movie been written now, the movie would be the same up until this point, but this would happen at the 1 hour mark. And then they would get into a big fight of like, you tricked me. Like, I tricked you. You were lying. You were a princess and you didn't tell me.
Right.
And she's like, well, I guess I don't know you at all. I guess I don't know you at all. And then they'd have to have a fight. And then they would each talk to somebody else. And then they would have to reunite and get over it. Because you have to have a fight in every romantic comedy.
Absolutely.
And I hate it so much. Why? It just bogs things down. And you always say like, oh, because it's love from hate. And it's like, that's not a thing. That doesn't need to be a thing in romantic comedies. And this shows you this doesn't need to be a thing in these movies.
No.
And I always said like, if they remade it now, they did remake it and I watched it.
Did they?
Well, kind of. It's called Chasing Liberty. It's a Mandy Moore.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's this.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, it's the president's daughter and a Secret Service agent.
Because it's
but then they find out like, hey, you tricked me, and then they have a big fight, and that's at the halfway point or like a 3/4 point, and then they have to get back together, and it's exactly what I expect, and it's terrible.
It is.
I hated it.
Not a great movie
because it might have been fine for what it was, but what it was this, and it's so much worse because I think the ending is kind of. No, it's probably the performances by Audrey and Gregory. But the next best part is this ending. It kind of solidifies what this movie is because it throws away the conventions of the genre. And it's not for shock value or for like, oh, a twist. It's for this serves the story better.
Right.
And there's no better reason to break from conventions of filmmaking or story than to serve the story and to serve the characters. And I think that's what it does. Decades of films have taught us like they end up together. And they don't in this one because I think that this movie is not fundamentally about finding love in one another.
No.
It's not about her finding the man for her.
Yeah.
It's about her finding herself.
Yeah, it's a self-growth thing.
And they both experience that, and there is romance to it, but I don't think that's the driving force of the script. Joe's not really her love interest. Or he is clearly, but more than that, he is her partner in crime.
He's her guide through this new world.
Absolutely. Yeah. He is somebody in this world who does not have expectations to impose on her. And he's the first person to do that, right? He is a guide to her newfound free will, right? He's showing you, like, this is what it can be like, because he lives that life, and he doesn't see anything special about it because that's his life. He does what he wants.
Yeah, he lives his life. He goes out, he plays poker with his friends, he drinks in the afternoon, and, he just, like, does whatever he wants, and I love that.
And I think you could argue that he has learned some responsibility and duty from her. He's realized quite possibly, but that's
benefit of structure, maybe.
Sure,
yeah,
but that's like, I guess.
Yeah,
that's not the point. It's about her, and it's about her going out and trying new things, and his purpose is to enable that, to be someone who is supportive when she tries new things and it's great, like her haircut or whatever, or to try new things and fail, like driving. He is the only person to support her and give her freedom, but support her successes and her failures, and give her the space to make those choices. She has had no agency in her life, even though she is someone who is of great power. She doesn't have the power to choose.
Right.
And that's what Joe gives her.
Yep.
I didn't mention it before, but this movie was written by Dalton Trumbo.
Yes.
And do you know that name at all?
No, but I know that you've told me before that he wasn't credited and that he...
Yeah, so he was one of the people who were blacklisted. I think he was part of the Hollywood 10, which was a group of people who had to testify in... I can't remember what those crazy witch hunt things were called. I think it was like the Committee on Un-American Activities or something like that.
Oh.
So he had to testify, and they're like, have you ever been a member of the communist, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It was the communist witch hunt times. It's a McCarthyism and all of that. So he was called up to do that, and he refused to name names. He refused to testify. And I believe he served a prison sentence of like 10 years or something. But after that... Don't quote me on that because I'm not entirely sure. There's a movie about Trumbo that I haven't watched. Bryan Cranston plays Trumbo. So I hear it's very good, but I haven't seen it. So I'm not an expert on this, but he wrote this script, but was not credited. And I think this might have won an Oscar for writing.
It did. It won an Academy Award for Best Story.
Yeah, so that was Trumbo. He didn't get it because at this time, it was kind of known that people would write things, but they would get someone to be a front.
Yeah.
So whoever actually got it, I don't remember his name, but he was the front. And Trumbo had really written it. It also got the Oscar for costume. It was Edith Head, I think, who's won more costuming Oscars than anyone, I think. Again, I don't really know these things off the top of my head, but she's won many, and costumes, again, were great. And then Audrey Hepburn, of course, won Best Actress in her first lead in an American film. But I was talking about Trumbo. He wrote it, and I think he eventually got credit in 2011. So I think he's been dead for some time, and did get the Oscar kind of switched over to him. So that's not really justice, but that's something.
He died in 1976.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm just looking at his Wikipedia page now, and the politics of the time and how like cheated he would have been. And now that he has credit for it, it like doesn't right the wrong, I guess.
Yeah. It just shows you that in America then and now, you can be sent to prison just for your political beliefs. Yeah. And like land of the free and all that. But that's not the soapbox I'm on today. It's about Trumbo's script is that what I wanted to talk about. So maybe it's the kind of un-American take he has on this that I appreciate so much, perhaps. Again, probably stretching, but they admit in this movie that work and duty is not this glamorous thing. It's something that you have to do. And she's not content with her wealth and her position. And that's not the ultimate goal. In so many other movies, her starting point would be the goal. it would be in reverse, right? You have this free spirit, and then they end up being prim and proper and a princess. And here we're kind of going backwards. And this movie isn't about like conquering and winning, because they end up alone. We don't know what's going to even happen to Joe. He's in debt now, right? He's not doing well. And she goes back and she looks not happy. She told her staff that she's here because she has to be, and she will be, but she's not happy about it. And all of that seems very different from the 1950s American ideals, especially in a romantic comedy. So maybe it's his kind of anti-American or just a different point of view sentiments that I latch onto so much.
Yeah. Huh. I like that take.
Well, we went through this pretty quick, although it's probably close to an hour, but that's quick for us. I talked way too much like I often do, but do you have any kind of final thoughts to wrap up Roman Holiday?
I just love the storyline and the lack of focus on the love interest idea that so many romantic comedies just really heavily rely on now. Like, she's got to find her man. That's like the number one issue in movies now. And I just really love that this one didn't fall into that trap. And I guess this is like very, very early romantic comedy, so it's not like they knew what the formula is now. But
I think they absolutely knew that formula at this point. That formula had existed already. And there's other movies from the 50s that fit into it. Not as clear as everything post like 1990, where it like really is much more specific, but the general formula I think was still in place here. Okay.
That's interesting to know. I just love the like female empowerment version or like reading of this movie, and how she really takes her own life into her hands and like molds it into what she kind of wants it to be, but also stays true to what she knows she needs to do. And I just really love that idea. And I think it's like an important message, and everyone should watch this movie ever.
So do you feel yourself kind of coming around to my way of thinking on the romantic comedies? Because I said when we started this that, yeah, you brought me some and I said, no, I hate those, but I do love romantic comedies, and here's what I love and here's what I hate. Do you kind of get where I'm coming from now? Because this to me is, along with like Pretty Woman is one of my other favorites. Those are two of like the pinnacles of what I think a well-written romantic comedy is, because they are about that self-discovery and about that empowerment. But if you couple that with finding a romantic love, then great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might be coming around.
Okay,
see.
You bring me some Katherine Heigl ones and we'll compare and contrast.
No, because you hate her.
I don't.
I thought you didn't like her.
Oh, you're thinking of Kate Hudson.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Heigl, I think, was just overexposed into the same thing too many times.
True. So, yes. Yeah. She had like one kind of movie and that was it. Yeah,
she might be good. I don't know many of hers, because she started making all those. I assume she did 12 movies with Gerard Butler. It was kind of that time in the world for me, and I didn't watch any of them. So
I think
they
it might have been
good.
2, but you know.
I have nothing good nor bad to say. I haven't watched them because they seemed like they fit into a certain formula. Yeah. I don't like Gerard Butler, though. No. I don't think he's great.
I could take him or leave him. He falls into that like handsome guys of Hollywood stereotype.
I think he just doesn't have like the charm of some of the other guys. There's so many guys at that level, and it seems like he doesn't care that he's in the movie.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think that's what a lot of people think, like, oh, that's the charm. He's an aloof douchebag. And it's like, why is that a charm? That is a bad thing. You want someone who cares. You want Gregory Peck.
Yeah. You want the charm and the handsomeness. Yeah. I don't know. That this movie worked well for me and I liked it.
Yeah, I love this movie. Maybe it's my favorite romantic comedy. I'm pretty sure it's my favorite Audrey Hepburn movie. Because it has all of the best parts of your classic romantic comedy. It has like, mistaken identity and like the hijinks with that.
Yeah.
It has hijinks in a new place, like the vacation aspect, which is also in a lot of them. It has a makeover sequence. It has all of those touchstones that have existed for like 80 years of cinema plus.
Right.
But it doesn't have those parts that I hate. It doesn't have like an internalized misogyny. It doesn't have that third act where they fight for no reason. There's always a manufactured conflict. Sometimes it's so manufactured, it's like, oh, I saw you do this. And then it turns out like, oh, that wasn't me. And that's the resolution.
Yeah.
That's such lazy writing. I always just say, just skip it. You don't need to throw that part in. And this is a perfect example of it. And not only do they skip that part, but then they bring it around and turn it into something new, something novel, and something that makes you feel good and sad at the same time. You feel happy for these characters having gone through what they went through, and sad that they can't be together. But I think in the end, I don't feel cheated that I didn't get the ending that Hollywood has promised me. I feel fulfilled that these characters got something that they did need, even if it's not each other.
Yeah, they got something out of it, and it doesn't feel like they lost.
Yeah. And then it's the opposite of so many of the normal princess stories of it's not someone who is like, oh, I'm clumsy and I fall down and I have curly hair, but you can be a princess. And I hate a lot of things involving royals because it just says like, because of who you are, like your genetics and how you were born, that makes you better. That is the story of so many of those ones, that they just don't know that they are royalty, and then they find out, now they're great.
Yeah.
And now they're happy.
Yeah.
And this shows you that, no, there is nothing special about being royalty. It is something that is thrust upon you, and you're not good or bad because of it. It's just something, it is a job. And it was her job, and she doesn't want this job. But we get that reverse princess makeover, and rather than being someone who was clumsy and then becomes an elegant princess, she was an elegant princess who has a makeover to be a self-actualized independent woman. And it's not something you see a lot, and it should be.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, that's maybe where we'll wrap it up, because I haven't soliloquized like that at the end of a podcast in a while.
No, but you feel very strongly about it, I can tell.
I love this movie. I love Audrey Hepburn, and I love Roman Holiday.
So good.
It really is. So next, what are we doing next week?
Well, we are continuing our Audrey Hepburn journey, where we are going to talk about Breakfast at Tiffany's. The week after, we will be doing a rebroadcast of My Fair Lady. And then we have some fun summer surprises coming for you. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. So Breakfast at Tiffany's next week. That was your pick as your favorite Audrey Hepburn movie. I think it is a very good movie, but I haven't seen it in literal decades, so I'm really excited. Same with this, but I still remembered quite a bit. But I don't know Breakfast at Tiffany's nearly as well, so I'm excited to see it.
I'm excited to see it and see how much I actually remember, because I do think I'm falling into that trap of like, oh, I've seen it so many times. Of course, I know. You see the
poster and you kind of think, like, yeah I remember all that.
And like the stills, like I was doing social media for last week's episode, and I was looking at all these pictures, and I was like, I feel like I remember this whole movie. So we'll see.
All right. You will see too if you join us next week. Watch Breakfast at Tiffany's, and we'll talk all about it next week.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.